Hello and welcome. I'm April LeVasseur. This is my presentation for LUT1 at Western Governors University. Over the years, there have been challenges to affirmative action, both in the courts and at the ballot box. In 1978, the Supreme Court weighed in when Alan Bach, a white applicant, was denied twice by the medical school at the University of California in Davis. They ruled that racial quotas were unconstitutional, but race could still be considered alongside other factors. By the mid-1990s, nationwide support for affirmative action had faded. In the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, Cheryl Hopwood challenged the policies at the University of Texas Law School, and the practice ended at all public universities across the state. Other legal challenges followed. 5 states have now ended affirmative action. In 2003, the Supreme Court decided in Gratz v. Bollinger that the University of Michigan's undergraduate admissions policies were too mechanistic in awarding points based on race. In Grutter v. Bollinger, however, they decided that U of M's law school policies were all right because race was used only to supplement other factors. Researchers have studied the effects of ending affirmative action. Today, I will discuss 3 areas. First, these trends have widened racial disparities in higher education. Second, women have also been affected. But most importantly, motivation and morale have suffered in states where affirmative action has ended. My thesis, although it isn't perfect, affirmative action has helped to bridge the gaps in academic achievements and should be continued while they still exist. In 1996, California voters passed Proposal 209, ending the consideration of race in college admissions. The following November, it became law. This top graph shows admission rates for black students throughout the University of California. In 1996, their percentage among freshmen began to drop. This continued until 1998, when their percentage reached its lowest point in a decade. 1998 was the first fall term after the new law went into effect. Ronald Caldwell from the University of Kansas reported the percentage of black students among freshmen at UCLA fell from 38.4% to 23.6% that first year, and minority freshmen at UC Berkeley fell from 20.7% to only 9.9%. Their numbers remained low for several years after that. The same trend was seen at the University of Texas after the Hopwood decision ended affirmative action there. But minorities are not the only ones affected by these measures. Women have also been affected. Correlations have been seen between Proposal 209 and the falling numbers of women hired by universities in California. This graph shows the gap between the percentage of women among new PhDs and their percentage among new faculty hires. This top line here shows that more women are earning PhDs and have been since the 1980s, but fewer women have been hired throughout the system since Proposal 209 became law. The number of women hired by the University of California had been increasing, but after affirmative action ended, the effects on gender equity there were immediate. The percentage of women among new faculty hires quickly dropped. The most dramatic effect was at UC Davis, where according to law professor Martha West, their numbers fell from 53% of new hires to only 22% within 5 years. As she pointed out, even a temporary lapse can affect universities for years because academics change jobs less frequently than others. But most damaging is the effect these measures have had on motivation and morale. Studies have shown a drop in standardized test scores and the number of minorities applying to colleges in those states. Professor Mark Long reported that fewer minorities were applying at the University of Washington after voters passed Initiative 200, ending affirmative action there. And Lisa Dixon from the University of Texas at Austin reported that the same thing was happening there as well. Results from the Peabody Individual Achievement Test for Math showed that black school children's test scores fell after the policy changes occurred. This suggests that the perception of having fewer opportunities has had its toll on study habits. Not only are fewer minorities being accepted into college in those states, fewer are even applying in the first place. In conclusion, support for affirmative action has faded, and in a perfect world it wouldn't be necessary. But until that perfect world arrives, it's still a necessary part of maintaining classroom diversity and giving minorities a fair and equal chance. Are there any questions?
Yes, minorities are protected by Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination and is enforced by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission Why is affirmative action still needed? Isn't that reverse discrimination?
Well, to suggest that white applicants have been discriminated against implies that some disparate treatment or adverse impact has occurred. But the evidence overwhelmingly shows that white applicants continue to have an unfair advantage. President Lyndon Johnson pointed out that banning discrimination didn't automatically level the playing field. He compared it to that of leading someone to the starting line of a race after they'd been hobbled by chains for many years. Affirmative action isn't a perfect solution, but the benefits outweigh the disadvantages. Are there any other questions?
Yes. Does affirmative action cause job candidates or university applicants who may not be as qualified as others to be accepted just for the sake of political correctness or to make the school look good?
Yes, that has always been a popular argument, but the Hopwood decision explicitly addresses that issue. Schools and other organizations cannot use affirmative action just to inflate their public approval or make them look good. Race can only be considered alongside other factors. And while the Hopwood decision protected many schools from being burdened by a problem that they didn't necessarily create, it nevertheless created a built-in defense against the argument that affirmative action could be misused as a practice based on racial quotas. Are there any other questions? No? Okay, well, thank you.